Betty Broderick. It's a name that resonates with people of San Diego even today. Her story has been one of intrigue for me as well as many others for over 30 years. You're asking why? Because it happened right here in the quiet neighborhood of Marston Hills of San Diego. Hi, I'm Bumper Prather, and this is the story of Betty Broderick. Tucked on a quiet lot in the quiet neighborhood of Marston Hills in San Diego is the former home of Dan and Linda Broderick. This is where they lived and where they ultimately died. Dan and Linda lived happily and not so happily until their murders on November 5th of 1989. Dan and Betty married April 12, 1969. They had 5 children, however, one died shortly after birth. Outwardly, they portrayed the most perfect couple in the perfect marriage. Dan was a successful malpractice attorney here in San Diego and would later go on to become president of the San Diego Bar Association. Betty took pride in becoming a mother and doting housewife, but things would go terribly wrong, leading to their divorce. Dan would later marry Linda, his young assistant at the law firm, and he and Linda then would be later murdered by Betty at this home here behind me on that fateful day in November. Betty went through a series of 2 trials. The first one ended in a hung jury, and the second one she was found guilty of 2 counts of second-degree murder. She was later given 2 consecutive sentences of 15 years to life, plus 2 years for the use of an illegal firearm. Since then, Betty has been up for parole twice and denied both times. She won't be eligible for parole again until the year 2032, when she'll be 84 years old. I've done my own research on Betty and studied the timeline of events that led up to that day she murdered Dan and Linda back in November of 1989. I've seen many interviews of her children, and I've seen interviews of the psychiatrists that studied Betty's demeanor and actions that led her to homicide, killing her ex-husband Dan and his new wife Linda. Betty has shown no remorse for her crimes, in my opinion. Was she a victim of circumstance, or was she a villain with rage out for revenge against her ex-husband and his new wife? Draw your own conclusions. Check out the facts of the Betty Broderick story and you decide for yourself. As for me, I believe without a doubt, Betty was indeed a woman scorned.